Dear students, in this paper of environmental chemistry, having studied all the aspects of environmental chemistry, that is whether it is soil pollution, air pollution, water pollution, let us now try to take some case studies. And when we talk about a tragedy which occurred using some chemicals, Bhopal Gas Tragedy immediately comes in our mind. So, in this particular module, we shall be focusing on Bhopal Gas Tragedy. After studying this module, you shall be able to know about the details of Bhopal Gas Tragedy. You shall be able to know about the impact of the Bhopal Gas Tragedy on the lives of people there, on the animals and the entire ecosystem. You shall be also able to know about the exact cause of the disaster and learn about some techniques to overcome the effects of such a gas exposure if it happens again. Let us begin with knowing about Bhopal disaster. The Bhopal disaster is also known as the Bhopal Gas Tragedy, and this is recognized as one of the world's worst industrial disaster or ecological disaster of a gas leak incident, and that happened on the night of 2nd-3rd December in 1984 at the Union Carbide India Limited, that is UCIL pesticide plant in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. And it has been estimated that approximately around 5 lakh people were exposed to the gas which was methyl isocyanate, abbreviated as MIC, and some other toxic chemicals. And these toxic chemicals, they enter the shanty towns near the plant. The immediate estimation of number of people who died immediately in the disaster was 2,259. After that, the government of Madhya Pradesh confirmed a total of 3,787 deaths, followed by thousands later deaths and injuries to lakhs and death of around 50,000 livestock. The precise cause of the disaster remains still unrecognized. The Indian government and local activists claim that slack management and deferred maintenance caused the backflow of water into a MIC tank during the maintenance of pipe. And this MIC or the methyl isocyanate, if you try to know, you are already aware, it is an organic compound which is highly volatile in nature. It is a colorless liquid with sharp odor and boiling point of 39.1 degrees centigrade. You can see it is very near the room temperature. Methyl isocyanate is highly flammable in nature, and its flammable range varies from 5.3% to 26% concentration in the air. The safety system of the power station were not up to date, and many valves and lines were not functioning properly, and they were in poor conditions. Also, the vent gas scrubbers and the steam boiler used to clean the pipes were not working properly. And during this fatal night, that is 2 and 3 December 1984, water entered a side pipe and then entered a tank containing 42 tons of methyl isocyanate. A very vigorous reaction took place between water and MIC, and this was further accelerated by various contaminants, high temperatures and other factors. Iron also acts as a catalyst in the reaction of water and MIC. The reaction was exothermic in nature, and this resulted in increase of the temperature of the tank to almost 200 degrees centigrade, and this also subsequently raised the pressure. And this sudden rise of the temperature and pressure resulted in the release of toxic gases from the MIC holding tank. And it only took about 40 to 60 minutes for 30 metric tons of MIC to escape out into the atmosphere. And in around 1 hour, such a large quantity of toxic MIC, that is methyl isocyanate, escaped in atmosphere, and this was responsible for killing more than 3,000 people and affecting around 5 lakh people, and is known as the Bhopal Gas Tragedy. Let us try to know more details about this and try to know what are the impacts of methyl isocyanate exposure. Why it became so deadly? If there is any other gas, if you have LPG, if it escapes, then it will not be poisonous. But yes, it has the chances that it will be capable, because it is flammable, it can catch fire. So different gases have different, but the butane, if you look in normal butane and isobutane in the LPG, that is non-reactive. But methyl isocyanate is highly reactive, and it also reacts with water and all the things inside our system, and that is why it is highly poisonous. Looking at the impacts of methyl isocyanate exposure, the exposure of methyl isocyanate gas, initially it causes acute effects such as coughing, eye irritation, feeling of suffocation, burning in the respiratory tract, blepharospasm, breathlessness, stomach pains and vomiting. In the Bhopal gas tragedy, at night people got awakened due to such feelings. So initially there is choking, reflexogenic circulatory collapse, pulmonary edema, and later on it resulted in immediate death of many people. Remaining were immediately admitted in the healthcare centers, but unfortunately approximately 70% of the doctors and medical staff were underqualified and unprepared to handle thousands of sufferers having such position. Doctors were not trained of systematic treatment for the MIC gas inhalation. So this was the first of all experience, and they were not able to handle this. Within a few days, trees in the vicinity became barren, and 2,000 bloated animal carcasses had to be disposed of. It was suggested to the survivors not to consume fish, as they were also contaminated by the high concentration of methyl isocyanate. Of the total number affected of around 5 lakhs, if we talk about the number of children who were exposed to gases was at least 2 lakhs, and around 3,000 pregnant women. A total of 36 wards were marked by authorities as gas affected, and many new hospitals were established within weeks by the state government in the area affected by the gas leakage. But in spite of all this, there were 3,787 deaths, as I told you earlier also, as confirmed by the government of Madhya Pradesh. And after this incident, a number of clinical studies were performed on the Bhopal gas tragedy, and some of the prominent effects which have been studied and their corresponding, which reported long-term health effects, they were in eyes, respiratory tracts, neurological system, psychological problems, and children's health. Many other studies also were carried out on other effects, but they are insufficient fields of study like female reproduction, chromosomal aberrations, cancer, immune deficiency, neurological sequelae, post-traumatic stress disorder, and children born after the disaster. The less highlighted later cases are respiratory insufficiency, cardiac insufficiency, cancer, and tuberculosis. If we talk about the various activist organizations, There were at least 14 different NGOs who were immediately engaged. The disaster was first reported or published by the activist organization Eklavya and the Delhi Science Forum. Around 10 local organizations engaged on long term have been identified, and more than 15 national organizations have been engaged, along with a number of international organizations. The international campaign for justice in Bhopal, like if we talk about some important organization, it coordinates the international activity. Bhopal Medical Appeal, it collected the funds for Sambhavna Trust. Sambhavna Trust or the Bhopal People's Health and Documentation Clinic. It provides the medical care for gas affected patients and those living in the water contaminated area. Then there is a Chingari Trust which provides medical care for children being born in Bhopal with malformations and brain damages, and the students for Bhopal, they are based in USA, and International Medical Commission on Bhopal, it provided medical information from 1994 to 2000. Now talking about the causes of the disaster. In the case of Union Carbide Corporation versus Union of India, if we look at the legal perspective, there were two arguments which were discussed. First is, it is the corporate negligence argument, and this point of view argues that management and to some extent the local government under invested in safety and allowed for a dangerous working environment. Issues mentioned here include the filing of the MIC tanks above the allowed level, bad maintenance of the plant, allowing several safety systems to be impractical due to poor maintenance and switching off safety system in order to save money, including the MIC tank refrigeration system. Other factors which were identified by government inquiries, they included the undersized safety devices and the dependence on manual operations. Some specific management problems like lack of skilled operators, reduction of safety management, insufficient maintenance and inadequate emergency action plans have also been pointed out. According to the corporate negligence argument, workers had been cleaning out pipes with water nearby, and this water was diverted due to combination of improper maintenance, leaking and clogging, and eventually this ended up in the MIC storage tank. If we talk about the other perspective, that is the disgruntled employee sabotage case, and according to this point of view, it has been mentioned in the case that the worker sabotage point of view argues that it was not physically possible for the water to enter the tank without a concerted human effort, and that extensive testimony and engineering analysis leads to a conclusion that water entered the tank when a rogue individual employee hooked a water hose directly into the empty wall on the tank side. Now maintained by Dow Chemical Company, Union Carbide continues a website devoted to the disaster and claims that the incident was result of sabotage. So according to them, this point of view is there, stating that sufficient safety systems were in place and operative to prevent the intrusion of water, and it was this version which was given. If we talk about the judgment, the 1984 gas leak in Bhopal was a terrible tragedy that continues to evoke strong emotions even after so many years. In the wake of gas release, the Union Carbide and its then chairman Warren Anderson, they worked diligently to provide aid to the victims and attempted to set up a process to resolve their claims. All claims arising out of the release were settled in 1989 at the explicit direction and with the approval of the Supreme Court of India by means of a settlement agreement between the Government of India, UCC and UCIL. In 1989, Supreme Court of India gave the decision of the case. And in this order, it made emphasis on the pressing urgency to provide immediate and substantial relief to the victims of the disaster, and found the case to be preeminently fit for an overall settlement between the parties, covering all litigations, claims, rights and liabilities related to and arising out of the disaster. The Union Carbide Corporation was ordered to pay a sum of US dollars 470 millions to the Union of India in full settlement of all claims, rights and liabilities related to and arising out of this Bhopal gas disaster. In 1991 and again in 2007, the Supreme Court upheld the fairness and adequacy of the settlement in response to the court challenges from non-government organizations. So, this is the legal perspective and how the settlement was given, but still many NGOs, they kept on asking for more judgment. But from environmental chemistry perspective, is also you have to be aware about the ongoing contamination. The hazardous chemicals were used to be dumped in the area around the plant. So, this is not that only the MIC leaked, there were other chemicals also which used to be dumped in that area around the plant. In 1982, that is before this tragedy, tube wells near the UCIL factory, they were tested by UCC's laboratory, revealing soil and water samples containing toxic chemicals which are further toxic to fish. The chemicals released from plant, they continued to leak and pollute the groundwater. Whether the chemicals pose a health hazard is disputed. The surrounding area was mainly contaminated by the dumping of hazardous chemicals to the area near the plant. UCC states that UCIL has started the cleanup work after the incident as suggested by the Indian central and state governments. After that, which was continued by the successor to UCIL till 1994. The successor, Ever Ready Industries India Limited, that is EIIL, ended the work of cleaning in 1998 by transferring the responsibility of the controlling site to the state government of Madhya Pradesh. At this point of time, let me show you where this Bhopal gas tragedy which has happened in this factory is located in Bhopal right now. I happen to visit that place and you can see where it is there. Continuing further, the laboratory tests in 1989 revealed that soil and water samples collected from the area near the factory, they contain toxic chemicals, whereas inside the plant 21 areas were reported to be highly polluted. In 1991, the municipal authorities declared that water from over 100 wells is contaminated and hazardous for health if used for drinking. In the beginning of 1999, studies made by Greenpeace suggested that soil, groundwater, well water and vegetables from the residential areas around the UCIL, they show contamination with a range of toxic heavy metals and various chemical compounds. Other studies have shown contamination in soil and groundwater in the vicinity of the plant. Reported polluting compounds, they included 1-naphthol, naphthalene, 7 terry residue, mercury, toxic organochlorines, volatile organochlorine compounds, chromium, copper, nickel, lead, hexachloroethane, hexachlorobutadiene and pesticide HCH. Many of these contaminants were also found very strangely in the breast milk of women living near the area. So, this is really very alarming. Drinking the water supply near the site contains 500 times more contamination than the maximum limits recommended by the World Health Organization. In 2009, the Center for Science and Environment a Delhi-based pollution monitoring lab released test results showing pesticide groundwater contamination up to beyond 3 kilometers from the factory. Unfortunately, not even Bhopal could inspire other chemical companies. The industries still continue to harm its worker and the surrounding communities while profiting from a lack of meaningful regulation and ineffective enforcement of the existing laws governing toxic chemicals. And as chemistry students who have studied this paper, you should know that, and you should really work that there is a need for better industrial practices, including the safety of workers, environment friendly policies and their implementation. There should be all care taken so that disaster like this should never happen again in future. And in case they happen, there must be a better preparedness for handling it. If you ever smell of any gas leak with irritation in your eyes, as chemistry student you should know one very simplest way of decreasing this effect is just take a hanky or any other cloth, dip it in water and cover over your nose and eyes with it. The reaction of gas will take place over this hanky and it will be less amount which will be going inside your biological system and it will be creating less damage. So much to be learned from this Bhopal gas tragedy so that we are better prepared and we don't let these type of incidents happen again. Let us try to know from one eyewitness that after this Bhopal gas tragedy happened, what was the scene he could see from his eyes, and he also contributed in some way. Let us try to know more about it. Dear students, you must be now very curious that what is the situation of Bhopal now. Since 1984 when this tragedy happened, now we are in 2015, what is the situation in Bhopal and especially the area around this factory? I happened to meet some victims and let us try to hear a few words from their mouth. Dear students, let us now summarize what we have learnt in this module. We have learned the Bhopal disaster, which is also known as Bhopal gas tragedy, and this was the world's worst industrial disaster of gas leak incident which happened in India, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. The gas responsible for this was methyl isocyanate, and this is volatile in nature. It is colorless liquid with sharp odor and boiling point of very low 39.1 degree centigrade. Methyl isocyanate is highly flammable in nature. We also studied that after this tragedy, a total of 36 wards were marked by the authorities as being gas affected, affecting a population of almost around 5 lakhs. And out of these, there were 2 lakh who were children and almost 3,000 pregnant women. There are 2 main lines of argument involving the disaster. The corporate negligence point of view argues that the disaster was caused by a potent combination of under-maintained and decaying facilities. But the other viewpoint says it was the worker sabotage. So, after studying this Bhopal gas tragedy module, dear students, I think we will be now more cautious and will take all precautions for this type of incident not to happen. And if it ever happens, we should be better prepared to handle it so that we can minimize the effect and the impact it has on the lives and other things.